Industry, Commerce and Tourism, on behalf of His Excellency Mr. Zayed Al Zayani, Minister of Industry, Commerce and Tourism, Kingdom of Bahrain. Ms. Iman, please, stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Hassan. It gives me a great pleasure to be amongst you today. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to express my gratitude to all members of UNISMO for their efforts and initiatives to support the SMEs by creating cross-border opportunity in a time that markets are facing challenges and businesses are passionate for new chances. The Kingdom of Bahrain has attached great importance to invest in entrepreneurship and innovation, aiming to enhance the competitiveness of the startups and the SME sectors over the past 2 decades by focusing on the transition from an oil-based economy to a globally competitive and productive one as per Bahrain's Economic Vision 2030. Depending on sustainability, fairness, and competitiveness as its core principles, focusing on partnership between the public and the private sectors to create and encourage the environment. The Kingdom of Bahrain is ambitious and determined to be a hub for entrepreneurs, startups, and SMEs in the region and globally. Therefore, we have invested heavily to create the required infrastructure, supported policies, nurturing skills, with the government continuing efforts to streamline business environments. Ladies and gentlemen, within the framework of developing startups and SMEs, the SMEs Development Board was formed under the directives of His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, the Crown Prince, the Chairman of the Economic Development Board, with a 5-year action plan until the year 2020, under 5 major themes: access to finance, access to markets, streamlining business environment, skill development, and fostering innovation to create a sustainable sector with a dynamic, competitive, and innovative features based on the initiatives and programs. Those reflect that government's orientations to diversify sources of income and support the national economy. The board aims to strengthen the startups and SMEs capacities to boost their competitiveness in the domestic, regional, and global markets, in addition to increasing the SMEs' contribution to the GDP to 40%, SMEs export to 20%, and the national employment level. Therefore, in facilitating access to markets, Export Bahrain was inaugurated in November 2018 with the aim of encouraging and promoting national exports and improving their quality to enhance Bahrain's position as a global trading partner by providing the necessary tools and value-added services for the development for non-oil exports. The value of exports facilitated since Export Bahrain's inception is over $46 million in SMEs exports of national origin, as it has enabled around 39 products and service categories exported from across 9 sectors to access 42 different countries, and 26% of those businesses were able to enter into new markets which they were never exporting before. Ladies and gentlemen, in line with the national efforts to nurture continued growth opportunities available for businesses to expand into new markets and grow their customer base globally, Export Bahrain's new e-commerce initiative was created to promote a borderless marketplace for products and services made in Bahrain. To support the objectives of this new initiative, Bahrain Export has established exclusive partnership agreements with a growing list of prominent e-commerce platforms that are designed to provide highly competitive cost-saving and incentives to businesses listing their products and services. The SME sector has proven over time its interconnection through strong networking and linkages. The world has become a common platform for SMEs through means of export, e-commerce, and digitization. We are looking forward to, through your efforts, to highlight access to market opportunities at the time of the global reopening under the pandemic. Let me conclude by reiterating my thanks and appreciation to the Bahrain Small and Medium Enterprises Society, and to UNISMO, chaired by His Excellency Dr. Abdel Sha'la, for organizing this event and wishing you all success and prosperity. And if you allow me, I will have to excuse myself. If there are any questions, you can direct them to my colleague, Ms. Sheikh Al-Fadl, the Director of SMEs Development Directorate in the Ministry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shukran. Shukran. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Iman, for this wonderful speech. And I think the efforts of the Ministry, yourself, and especially His Excellency Minister Zayed Al-Zayani is well known. And I think now we welcome Dr. Abdullah Al-Sada, the Deputy CEO of the Bahrain Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for his speech. Dr. Abdullah, please welcome.
Good afternoon and good evening and good morning for all the participants in this online seminar from all over the world. At the beginning, I would like to thank Bahrain SME Society for organizing this event and congratulate the UNISMO for the first international online seminar. And I would like to thank you and for all the efforts you put to bring all the bodies to create the UNISMO. Such an establishment, of course, will support SMEs. We all believe in the SMEs and the role they play in the economy. His Excellency, Mr. Abdel Sha'la, highlighted that the economy of Bahrain depends and all the region on the SMEs. They represent about 98% in Bahrain. And the figures are all over the world, above 90 to 95%. That's kind of the range that you get. In Bahrain, we have established an ecosystem that is very supportive of the SMEs. In the past months, all the world went into difficulties with the economy. And the major challenges that companies find is one of the major challenges is financing. It's the biggest challenge that we keep hearing about in Bahrain Chamber of Commerce. Businesses are finding it very difficult to sustain themselves. And this is not a problem that we only face. We hear it all over. As Bahrain Chamber of Commerce, we have worked tirelessly with all the companies in Bahrain. We kept our doors open. Virtually, of course, not physically. And we heard from the various companies here in Bahrain. And we kept our channels open as well with the world and the various chambers. And we tried to, over the past months, to understand what's happening across the globe and understand the challenges and try to take these lessons and pass them and try to work with the government of the Kingdom of Bahrain to support the SMEs. Early on, when the pandemic was announced, we have worked and prepared a list of the key challenges and some recommended solutions. And this list has been passed to the government of Bahrain, and His Majesty the King and His Royal Highness the Prime Minister and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince immediately supported and issued a financial stimulus and support to SMEs. When it was initially announced, it was 4.3 billion. And the number has increased since then. And the key message from that was the sustainability of businesses. Businesses take time to set up and to sustain. So a major factor for us in Bahrain was to sustain these businesses. Of course, we're paying attention to the changes happening, and we understand that many sectors were affected more than others. Of course, as His Excellency highlighted, food and beverage, tourism, recreational activities were affected the most. However, there are other businesses that boomed as well. I was talking with a colleague of ours, one member of our committees. He works in, or he's a member in the ICT committee. And he was telling me, well, he cannot manage the demand because there are high demand. So the numbers here in Bahrain and as many countries as well, retail is a highly populated sector. And of course, we all know that retail has been affected. So businesses has to think thoroughly about what they need to do in the next few months. Because of course, stimulus packages will dry out. So what else they can do? So suggestions for them always to go online and find alternatives to do business online. And we have been working with a number of companies here in Bahrain and some of our partners to try to stimulate the online activities. One initiative that the Ministry of Industry and Commerce launched was the virtual mall. They called it Bahrain Mall.bh for businesses, basically trade, the retail sector to enlist there. Of course, there are many applications that started in the same veins. For us, it's very important that we continue the demand. And so the demand for businesses. So we try to connect Bahrain with international markets. So we have taken the opportunity that, well, flights are no longer available, or there are restrictions in some countries with the quarantine periods and all of that. So we saw this an opportunity. So when businesses come to us looking for partners, it is easier for us to connect them through virtual channels. We've been running a number of virtual B2B sessions. Just yesterday, we had a session with Thailand, a virtual business-to-business meeting. We have been running a number of educational and awareness forums to stimulate the thinking of businesses of the key focus areas. Of course, budgeting, cutting costs is one of the prime areas. However, there are areas as well that we keep emphasizing to them. International trade, they have to find the potential. We as a Chamber of Commerce, we have connections with various organizations. One of them is Bahrain Export, which comes under the SME board. Bahrain Export do support businesses and try to find the markets as well. However, many people, they don't know and they don't go through the tools that are available. You know, there are tools that are available internationally, not just in Bahrain. For example, the International Trade Center publishes reports. They have tools to show demands in the world about the various products. And these demands, it goes down to products. You know, so for businesses, it's easy for them to look for the countries that in demand. For example, Bahrain, we are a country that is a producer of aluminium. So, and based on the figures, you know, there's always high demand. It's one of the booming sectors we have in Bahrain as manufacturing. So for businesses need to look for these opportunities and then tap into the chamber where we can find them partners elsewhere. This is for the international trade. To conclude, really, you know, I would like to thank the organizers of this event and to request the audience to fire their questions and know that Chamber of Commerce is the sole representatives or the main representative of businesses, where businesses can feed into their inquiries, their demands, challenges, and then, of course, chambers
already am here
and convert them or pass them to the concerned stakeholders to support them. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. I think the BCCR, the Chamber of Commerce, the Bahrain Chamber of Commerce, has a great role to play supporting the SMEs, the entrepreneurs, and all the business owners in Bahrain, and help in connecting the national Bahrain business owners and entrepreneurs and SMEs owners with the international arena. Especially during such a pandemic, or let's say post-COVID-19, inshallah. And thanks also and appreciation goes to His Excellency Mr. Samir Nas, the chairman of the Bahrain Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and all the management. Thank you once again, Dr. Abdullah. And for all the participants and speakers, please note to go for the question and answer button at the bottom. So kindly go for chat at the bottom of the screen in order to have your question, which will be soon after our last, but not least, last speaker today. And we're very glad to have with us on board His Excellency Mr. Joy Concepcion from the Philippines, the Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship in Philippines. For the first time to have with us Mr. Joy, and we had a little problem with the connection with Philippines, which I think the time over there now is 6 p.m., 6+ p.m. So if it is all fine with Mr. Joy Concepcion, you can go online, please.
I'm online.
Salam
Okay. It's good morning there, no? In Bahrain.
It's good afternoon in Bahrain.
Good afternoon in Bahrain. Your Excellencies, in the Philippines, we basically, our business community, 99.6% of our entrepreneurs who comprise the business community are micro, small, and medium enterprises. In your case, they are practically maybe bigger because you've got small and medium enterprises. So of the 99.6%, about 95% of that are micro entrepreneurs. We have over 100 million people in the Philippines. Compared to your country, you've got 1 million+ people. We do, in a way, send a lot of people overseas, and Bahrain employs, I'm told, close to 60,000 Filipino workers, and we're one of the leading OFW in the world. Filipinos are basically very likable people in the sense that we excel in service. So the structure in the Philippines is that we're still a poor country. The rich, which is about, let's say, 1.5% of the business sector, are large and extra large companies, virtually controlling the entire economy. And the 99+% basically are part of that economy, which supplies products to the larger companies, either part of the supply chain from raw materials to distribution and all of that. And we're a growing population. I mean, there's, in the Philippines, there's no such thing as birth controls. I mean, people have families here, 5 kids, even if they can't afford it, 8 kids. So that's a challenging scenario. And it's putting pressure on the entire government to really how to provide for all of these people. And that's why we see the level of poverty is high. And for the last 15 years, I've served as an advisor to 2 presidents, former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo and now President Duterte, for entrepreneurship. Basically entrepreneurship focusing on micro and small. And the medium, but not too much in the medium, because the biggest challenge in our country are micro and small. Now, how do we do this? No? We mentor entrepreneurs, and that is very important. So we have what we call the 3 M's. In our framework of helping the entire ecosystem, we focus on 3 M's: mentorship, money, and market. When we talk of mentorship, we have close to about 700 mentors today, active mentors, that we deploy with our partners in government. So this is a public-private partnership. So we have a program called Mentor Me, and that is in partnership with 3 agencies: the Department of Trade and Industry, the Department of Agriculture, and TESDA. So we supply basically the component, the software component, which are the mentors. Okay, so that is very essential. As an entrepreneur myself, being in this, starting so many businesses for the last 30 years, the key to success is having a good mentor. Now, we created structured programs, no, whereby this is all free to our micro entrepreneurs. So what the government does is, since they have the network of people all over the different cities and towns, we then now search for these deserving entrepreneurs, and they are mentored for 12 weeks. No? And there are programs and modules for this. During this pandemic, in a way, it hasn't been a revelation for us to pivot towards a digital platform. So right now, it's costing us much less because we're not having to get public spaces and pay for the food. So now everybody goes online and basically a Mentor Me app called, and then we use Zoom basically to mentor all of these mentees. And our mentors, we have now better access to them because they don't need to take a plane ride down to a certain city or region. They can just go on Zoom and they're easily accessible. We pay these mentors, but a very nominal fee, and especially now that they are doing it online, it is even more affordable for us to really mount this. The program has been very successful. That I had also the Philippine ASEAN chair for the Philippines. No? And in 2017, I was the chair for the entire 10 countries. The private sector normally rotates that. And my legacy project, every country who hosts has to come up with a legacy project. Our legacy project, we launched what we call AMEN, ASEAN Mentorship for Entrepreneurship Network. So 10 countries creating a framework equal to what we're doing in the Philippines, gathering mentors as well, and creating a directory so that we now eventually can access each one's mentors. No? Whether it's an expert in agriculture, logistics, marketing, finance. So this is where what we call AMEN is moving towards too. So in the ASEAN level, aside from the local level in the Philippines where we have our mentorship program, at the ASEAN level, I have created together with the other 10 chairs to really create this sharing of mentors pool and eventually a platform that we have developed in the Philippines, a private-public partnership with government agencies that they now can use as a model. So the 3 M's I said is 1, mentors are critical. Number 2 is money. Access to funding is very important for an entrepreneur to start his business, to grow his business. And we now link with all the different banks. In our case, we use what we call microfinancial institutions, MFIs. These are people who lend small amounts, $5, $10, $20 to a business, a micro entrepreneur. Then, of course, as they get bigger, then they go into what we call bigger banks, and which we call rural and thrift banks. That's how we call them in the Philippines. And if they get really big, then they get into the universal and commercial banks. So money is very important. And we also have mentors who mentor them on how to access funding, capital through equity or loans. And the third M, which is very important for an entrepreneur, is market. So how do you market your products? Well, locally, internationally. So this is where we use both offline and online mentors to teach them on how to be able to determine and identify their proper market for either their product or their service, and to use the online platforms which are growing phenomenally in the Philippines. I don't know in Bahrain, but in the Philippines, online platforms are just taking over. Not as fast as what America has done, but fast enough that it allows access, more access for our entrepreneurs to be able to market their services and products. And you have all platforms, Grab, Lazada, Shopee, and Zalora, the list goes on. So we, in my group, the organization that I founded 15 years ago, it's the Philippine Center for Entrepreneurship. And we have a local brand called Go Negosyo in Tagalog, that's Get Into Business. So it's a very strong organization. We're all over the Philippines in different rural areas. And at this time of the pandemic, we have 3 online programs similar to what we're doing in Zoom right now, 3 times a day, 5 times a week. And and we are, constantly mentoring entrepreneurs who really need help in this pandemic. And we are tied up with all the government agencies that help MSMEs. So in a nutshell, that is what I am doing as part of the program. I worked with the President, Gloria Macapagal, before, now President Duterte, who is very pro-poor. He wants to help our entrepreneurs succeed. And he wants big business to help. It's been, I would have to say that big business, we control the entire economy in the Philippines. And live the lives of our Filipino people. So many of them are OFWs. So as they come back home, they have to know what to do with the money that they save. And we suggest to them that you don't be an entrepreneur while you're overseas, because some of them would give the money to a relative and they say, okay, just go into that business, and before you know it, the money just disappears. So it's very important for entrepreneurs, Filipinos who are in Bahrain, who want to get into business, to be very careful. Just don't give your money to a relative and tell him, okay, go out and look for me a business and invest there, and that's it. You might never see your money come back. You have to have a mentor to guide you through. And this is what we have done with the government as well, to teach many of our OFWs, which run into the millions, on how to invest their money properly and not become an entrepreneur overnight just because they have money. And that is the first thing. I mean, that's the last thing. And I normally recommend to our OFWs, secure first a home and then move up the ladder and eventually start the business. But you have to determine the right people who will run the business. So those entrepreneurs are part of this program. That would be my advice to the Filipino entrepreneurs in Bahrain. So I share the story that the way out of helping people out of poverty is through entrepreneurship. In other words, identifying one skill and turning that skill into a business. But in order to do that, one has to have a mentor to be able to guide them through that pathway, and one has to guide them to be able to access money and market. This pandemic has caused severe disruption in the Philippines. As you know, we are a tourist-based country. We have 7,100 islands. The entire tourism sector is closed. So you can see the amount of entrepreneurs affected. The restaurant business as well is completely in disarray because people don't want to go out because of the level of infection. So the challenges that many of our micro and small entrepreneurs face are pretty tremendous. And, but then again, Filipinos in a way are resilient. We weather the storm. We managed to get out of crisis. Basically my advice to many people is, at a time like when the new normal is present and not conducive to your business model, then hold back and stop, and rather than force and lose everything you have saved for. So I believe that countries like Bahrain, ASEAN, and other nations are having to pool resources and ideas together and come out with solutions on which sector can thrive through this pandemic. certain sectors are insulated, be it agriculture and the food and the medicine sectors, but certain sectors are severely hit. So what I'm doing in the ASEAN level with the 10 countries, we are now forming a group that will put together mentors that can share their best practices on how their industries have thrived through this pandemic, and that is being organized as we speak. So thank you for inviting me here. Our ambassador, Alfonso Bern, I think is with us today. We have a lot of Filipinos who are, benefiting from your country in terms of jobs, which is now very challenging in the Philippines because many entrepreneurs have closed, so they're not able to hire. So now we have a high unemployment level. But then again, we have to be optimistic and believe that eventually this soon will pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Great thanks for sharing such wonderful thoughts with us. And it's really great to see such a great match, I would say, of entrepreneurial activities, business augment, and government efforts, as well as the voluntary and the NGO level as well. So thank you very much. And I'm sure that the participants have a lot to take with them through this speech and this seminar. And with that, I think we conclude the first session of the seminar today. And we'll have a 10 minutes question and answer, after which we will start the second session of the seminar. So 10 minutes, please, for the participants, for the audience to have questions. And as I said, you can have your questions on the chat, or we can also open the audio. If someone wants to speak by raising his or her hand. Let's see if there are questions on behalf of the Embassy of Philippines and the Filipino community in Bahrain. We thank His Excellency Honorable Joy Conception for his meaningful and substantive message. Salamat po and shukran jazilan. Thank you very much. Yes, we're waiting for the questions. We have, again, I remind you all, we have only 10 minutes for the question and answer session, because in about 10 minutes time, we should start the second session. We have 3 more speakers, distinguished speakers, waiting. And as I said, either you raise your hand to speak or write your question on the.
Doctor, can I just, do you hear me, Doctor? Abdul Hassan?